Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Big tech has been all over the news this week. That is, if you were able to see what they didn't hide. Joining me now to break down what happened this week and what it means for the election and the future is Allum Bokhari, my colleague at Breitbart News. So, Allum, there was a huge sort of showdown in the House of Representatives this week with big tech. Breitbart was a part of that, and the instances of Breitbart being censored on Facebook, Google, etc., was a part of that. So talk about, I know you've done some research and some reporting on what has happened with Breitbart, specifically related to Google. So talk a little bit about what you found.
So we've been looking at traffic from Google searches to Breitbart and our general visibility on the Google search engine. Obviously, the market-leading search engine owns over 90% of the market. There's no real alternative. And what we found is really striking. Since 2017, shortly after Trump's inauguration, Breitbart's visibility on Google search, that's, the amount of times people see Breitbart links, has declined on average by 99.7%. That's not an exaggeration. So almost a 100% decline from where we were in 2016 and the run-up to that election. We've also seen that with the recent Google search update, traffic to Breitbart from searches for Joe Biden and Biden has gone to zero. There was a regular pattern before that. The traffic went up and down as you'd expect. Now it's zero. I don't think this is a coincidence. We've seen in the past leaks from within Google showing that they maintain search blacklists. They even call them blacklists inside the company, and they use those on YouTube. And Sundar Pichai even admitted that they have certain blacklists for Google's main search engine as well. We also saw that leaked footage from after the 2016 election from inside Google showing executives in complete panic mode over Trump's election. They had no idea how it happened. We saw Kent Walker, one of their executives, talking about how he wants to make the populist movement a blip in history. So they've revealed their agenda. We know they're rabidly anti-Trump. And now we're seeing the results with this massive decline in search visibility for Breitbart.
But during that hearing, the Google CEO, he said there's no agenda. There's no bias. We're not manipulating anything. Do you believe that?
Not at all. It doesn't add up whatsoever. They'll always use plausible deniability, introducing these general algorithm changes. But what we've seen from Google and Facebook is after these changes, conservative websites and conservative figures always get hit the hardest. And that's not even before we start talking about all the prominent Trump supporters who've been banned outright from these platforms. We've looked at Breitbart's SEO scores, that ranks, the quality of your website. And it's actually ahead of CNN in some cases. And that's based on Google's own SEO analysis tools as well as third-party tools. So that doesn't explain the decline. Volume of interest in political news has only gone up since 2016, so that doesn't explain the decline either. Volume of articles, steady or increased, that doesn't explain the decline. So it's clearly all the SEO experts we've talked to say this is clearly something manual. There's manual manipulation going on here. This doesn't happen by accident.
So leftists would just say, well, Breitbart's just unhappy because they're losing traffic. And when you lose traffic, you lose revenue. But pull out to sort of a broader, more of a philosophical perspective here and talk about if this is happening to Breitbart, what does that mean in terms of what these big tech companies are able to do in shaping what information people are receiving?
Well, one thing I'll say is on the traffic point, Breitbart's organic traffic has never been stronger. We're regularly ranked in the top one or two news websites in the US by Amazon-owned Alexa's web rankings. So despite the censorship from Google, our traffic is doing quite well. And that's another reason why Google's allegation that this is just an accident, this is organic, must be false, because Breitbart has not declined in popularity. Readers still like it. So it should be ranking highly on Google. But to your point, this is about more than just traffic, more than just clicks and, ad revenue. It's also about American democracy. Google has the ability to shut down any links to negative coverage about Joe Biden during an election year. This is a company that controls 90% of the search market. They have more power than any other entity over the flow of information on the web. And that's an extraordinary amount of political influence to have with zero oversight, zero legal checks and balances.
Well, and I took that when you posted that, the graph on Twitter, I took that personally because I was hired to cover the Biden campaign. And so to see how that just, it was like a cliff. It was not a gradual decline. It was overnight. Breitbart searches for Joe Biden on Google did not produce any Breitbart results. And that is staggering. So, and one of the things that I think Jim Jordan was attempting to get at was Google, they were in the bag for Hillary Clinton. They wanted to get Hillary Clinton elected. They did not like Donald Trump. And he was attempting to get the Google CEO to say on the record that they would not do what they did in 2016 in 2020. And so people will sort of dismiss that and say, well, he's just shilling for Donald Trump and he just wants to support Donald Trump. No, it comes down to a massive corporation that has a monopoly, largely has a monopoly on what information people are receiving, and they're able to manipulate that into how people think. You also wrote about an individual who was explaining how Google will attempt to and may actually successfully sway a significant portion of the voter population away from Donald Trump. Explain that a little bit.
So yes, this individual is Dr. Robert Epstein. He's a Harvard he's a Harvard-educated psychology professor, and he used to edit Psychology Today. He's actually a liberal. Used to be a big Clinton supporter, but he's an expert on the way search engines and search results can affect our political decision making. And he found that biased search results are able to bypass our natural critical faculties when assessing whether a source is biased or not, because we don't assume that a list of links on a website is going to be biased in any way. We think the links themselves might be biased, the stories, but not the actual list. So he found that Google could, if they wanted to, shift up to 10% of undecided voters towards the Democrats in the Democratic candidate in 2020, which is an extraordinary amount of votes and could easily swing the election.
Right. And so in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, et cetera, where, people are predicting, despite what the polls show, people are predicting that there will be razor-thin margins one way or the other, to have 10% of those voters influenced and swayed by how, algorithms work, I think is really significant. It was interesting also in that hearing to see how the Democrats were going after these various CEOs. My guess is that their remedy for what is going on is probably different than the Republicans. Allum Bokhari, senior tech correspondent at Breitbart News. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Kyle.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back.